When people discuss legendary guitarists, names like Jimi Hendrix, Eric Clapton, or Jimmy Page usually come up first. Yet George Harrison has often been overlooked as one of rock's most innovative players. Unlike many guitar heroes, Harrison never relied on flashy technique or lengthy solos. His strength came from melody, emotion, atmosphere, and precision. As the lead guitarist of the Beatles, Harrison helped expand what a guitar could do in pop music. He experimented with reverse tape effects, layered guitar parts, Indian-inspired phrasing, and melodic solos that always served the song itself. Many of the ideas he explored in the 1960s sounded years ahead of their time. His brilliance became even clearer during his solo career. Albums like All Things Must Pass proved he was far more than the quiet Beatle behind John Lennon and Paul McCartney. He was a visionary musician whose guitar work still feels timeless today. Here are 4 George Harrison solos that proved just how ahead of his time he really was. Number 1. Let It Be. Let It Be is one of the most beloved songs ever recorded by the Beatles. And while the emotional centerpiece is clearly Paul McCartney's heartfelt vocal and piano performance, George Harrison quietly elevates the track with one of the most tasteful guitar solos of his entire career. By the end of the 1960s, tensions within the Beatles had become impossible to ignore. Recording sessions were often tense, communication was breaking down, and each member was beginning to evolve creatively in different directions. Yet, even amid that instability, Harrison delivered guitar work that sounded focused, elegant, and emotionally perfect for the song. One fascinating detail about Let It Be is that there are actually 2 officially released versions featuring different Harrison solos. The single version and the album version were built from the same basic session, but Harrison overdubbed separate lead guitar parts for each mix. For one version, he used his Fender Telecaster, producing a cleaner and brighter tone. For the other, he switched to his Les Paul Standard, giving the solo a warmer, more saturated sound with heavier sustain. What makes both solos so brilliant is Harrison's restraint. Many guitarists would have tried to dominate a song this emotional with technical fireworks. Harrison did the opposite. Every phrase feels carefully chosen, almost conversational, allowing the melody to breathe naturally. The bends are subtle, the phrasing is lyrical, and the emotional weight comes from timing rather than speed. The solo also reflects Harrison's growing maturity as a player during the final Beatles years. Earlier in the band's career, Harrison's solos were often concise and tightly structured. By 1970, his playing had become more expressive and fluid, influenced partly by his love of Indian music and slide guitar techniques. You can hear that evolution clearly in Let It Be, where every note feels emotionally intentional. Decades later, the solo still sounds remarkably modern because it prioritizes feeling over excess. That approach would later influence countless melodic guitarists across rock and alternative music. Number 2. I'm Only Sleeping. If there's one Beatles song that perfectly captures the band's fearless studio experimentation during the mid-1960s, it's I'm Only Sleeping. Released on the groundbreaking 1966 album Revolver, the track sounds dreamy, hazy, and surreal from beginning to end. A huge reason for that atmosphere comes from George Harrison's astonishing reverse guitar solo. Today, reversed audio effects are common in music production. In 1966, however, the idea was revolutionary. The Beatles were already pushing the limits of what could be done inside a recording studio, and Harrison fully embraced that spirit of experimentation. Rather than simply improvising random notes and reversing the tape afterward, Harrison approached the solo with incredible precision. First, he composed the solo conventionally, then learned to perform it backward note by note so that once the tape itself was reversed, the phrasing would sound musical and intentional in forward playback. The process was incredibly difficult. According to Beatles engineer Geoff Emerick, it reportedly took around 9 exhausting hours to perfect the recording. Harrison had to think in reverse mentally while also maintaining timing and phrasing accuracy. It was an incredibly advanced concept for the era. The final result sounds almost supernatural. The notes swell unnaturally into existence before fading away, creating an eerie, floating sensation that perfectly complements the sleepy atmosphere of the song. Instead of sounding like a traditional rock solo, it feels like part of a dream sequence. What's especially impressive is how musical the reversed solo remains. Experimental techniques can sometimes feel gimmicky, but Harrison ensured that the melody itself stayed memorable. The reversed effect wasn't there merely to shock listeners, it served the emotional tone of the song beautifully. Songs like I'm Only Sleeping helped redefine the recording studio as a creative instrument rather than simply a place to document live performances. Harrison's willingness to experiment with tape manipulation years before it became widespread proves just how ahead of his time he really was. Number 3. Beware of Darkness. After the breakup of the Beatles, Harrison finally had the freedom to fully explore ideas that had often been overshadowed within the group. The result was All Things Must Pass, widely considered one of the greatest solo albums ever released by a former Beatle. Among the album's many highlights, Beware of Darkness stands out as one of Harrison's most emotionally rich compositions. The song itself is haunting and deeply spiritual, warning listeners about negative influences, ego, and illusion. But the guitar solo is what gives the track its emotional final punch. Unlike many rock guitarists of the era who prioritized technical aggression, Harrison approached solos almost like a vocalist. His phrasing on Beware of Darkness feels lyrical and meditative. Every note appears exactly where it needs to be, never overcrowding the arrangement. One fascinating aspect of the solo is the clear influence of Indian classical music on Harrison's melodic choices. By this point in his life, Harrison had spent years studying Indian music and spirituality, particularly through his connection with Ravi Shankar. That influence subtly shaped the way he bent notes and structured melodic movement. The solo almost feels like a conversation between sorrow and hope. Harrison avoids flashy runs entirely, instead focusing on emotional resonance. The sustained notes carry enormous weight, and the melodic contours feel deeply reflective. Production also plays a huge role here. The famous wall of sound style associated with producer Phil Spector gives the track a massive atmosphere, but Harrison's guitar still cuts through clearly because of how melodic and intentional the solo is. Beware of Darkness demonstrated that Harrison wasn't just an excellent guitarist within the context of the Beatles. He had fully developed his own musical identity by 1970, blending rock, folk, gospel, and Indian influences into something uniquely personal. Number 4. A Hard Day's Night. Long before George Harrison became known for spiritual songwriting and experimental studio techniques, he was already crafting unforgettable guitar moments during the Beatles' early pop years. One of the clearest examples is the 1964 classic, A Hard Day's Night. The song opens with one of the most famous chords in rock history. That explosive, jangling sound, played on Harrison's iconic 12-string Rickenbacker, immediately changed the sound of pop music in the mid-1960s. Even today, musicians still debate the exact structure of the chord because of how rich and layered it sounds. At the time, the use of a 12-string electric guitar in mainstream rock music was still relatively uncommon. Harrison helped popularize the instrument globally, influencing countless future bands, particularly within folk rock and jangle pop. Artists like Roger McGuinn and bands like the Byrds would later build entire sounds around ideas Harrison helped introduce. The solo itself arrives late in the song and lasts only a short time, but it's unforgettable. Harrison and producer George Martin made the clever decision to double-track the guitar part, giving it extra power and thickness. That production choice helped the solo leap out of the mix despite its brevity. What's remarkable is how confidently Harrison plays within such a compact space. He doesn't waste a single note. The phrasing is sharp, energetic, and instantly memorable. Even in the Beatles' earlier years, Harrison already understood that a great solo didn't need to be long to leave a lasting impression. Looking back now, A Hard Day's Night feels like an early glimpse of everything Harrison would later become: inventive, melodic, experimental, and completely dedicated to serving the song above all else.